You're listening to XVGM Radio. Welcome to XVGM Radio, where the bits keep coming. I'm Justin.
And I'm Mike.
And this is episode 76, The Wonderswan.
Yes, The Wonderswan, made by Bandai. Interesting little handheld system that we're going to be covering today. Musically, it's a very weird system. Like, I can't quite put my finger on it, and we'll talk about it in just a minute, but yeah, the Wonderswan's a pretty neat little handheld. It's not one that I ever experienced.
Well, there's a good reason for that.
Yeah, it only came out in Japan, so
Japan, exactly.
But it was always one of those ones that I heard about,
Yeah, same. And that's something that I found surprising as we were doing the research for this episode. I never realized that it was a Japan exclusive. When I was in high school, I remember hearing about the Wonderswan, and this now explains why I was never able to find one. But I wanted a Wonderswan for a good period of time because they had some ports of Final Fantasy and some of the Final Fantasies that we didn't get, and a handful of other things. And I was just like, why can't I find this thing? And I just was too dumb to know that it was Japan exclusive.
I always got it confused with the Neo Geo Pocket Color, to the point where when we were picking tracks for this episode, I was looking for that SNK versus Capcom card game that recently got a port to the Switch. And I was like, oh, it'd be fun to cover that. And I'm looking and I'm like, wait a minute. Did this not come out on the Wonderswan? I thought it was a Wonderswan exclusive. Turns out, nope, that's Neo Geo Pocket. So even today, I got it confused.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far as the sound that comes out of this thing, I agree with you. It does sound strange, although not in a like, oh, I don't like it kind of strange, but more in a, it sounds more advanced than what it should be. Like we'll get into the audio hardware later, but like to me, when I'm listening to the music from the Wonderswan, it sounds like there's more channels than I think there really are, and it sounds like there's more going on than what I'm used to in any other hand, like a Game Boy or maybe even a Game Gear. And it's weird. But it's fun.
It's strange. Like, you listen to a track off of the Wonderswan, and almost every single track that we've picked today, they all sound different. They don't all sound the same. They all sound very unique and very just bizarre. It's like you can't, like a Game Boy track, you could be like, yep, that's a Game Boy track. An NES track, yep, that's an NES track. Even a Game Gear track, you could be like, oh, that's either Game Gear or Master System. Kind of hard to tell between the two, but you can narrow it down. Like, it's either Game Gear or Master System for those two tracks. But like the Wonderswan, like if you played me a track off of this, I'd be like, is this a Master System track or like a Game Boy song? Like, very strange.
Yeah. I think the one thing that may be kind of consistent across a lot of these is you're going to hear, because of the system, you're going to hear a lot of crunchy drums, I think. Yeah. Or at the very least in the tracks that I found, the drums are generally nice and crunchy.
Very staticky.
How about you? Yeah.
Very staticky. This track that we came in on was from Pocket Fighter, which got a port to the Wonderswan in 2000. And the track that we played was Beach House, also known as Safril. And the arranger on this one was Norihiko Togashi. And it was by the original Isao Abe, Yuki Iwai, and Setsuo Yamamoto. Obviously, like, legendary Capcom composers there.
Yeah. One
of the reasons why it really stands out to me is that beginning with the drums that kind of bring in the track, the boo-boo-ka, boo-boo-ka, boo-boo-ka. And then it kind of rolls into this very light-hearted beach kind of sound to it. So it does nail that beach house vibe to me. But if I had to compare this with anything, the closest thing I can think of is like if you took that Woody Woodpecker track that I played, beach track, it reminded me of like if that got a port to the Master System. Because a lot of it later on in the track sounds very somber, very sad, very, very Master System-y.
Yeah. No, I agree. It definitely has that minor tones that you talk about with the Master System.
So what do you think of this one?
So I thought this one was a lot of fun. The opening, I got kind of like a soaring, or like a very floaty feeling, which was really cool. And it didn't. I don't remember the music from the Pocket Fighter games all that well, but like as I was listening to the opening, I was like, this doesn't feel like what I remember like the Pocket Fighter music being. Like this feels a lot more like just like happy, floaty type of a thing. But as it went on and as it got more into it, I kind of got a little bit more of that feel. The bass line on this one I thought was kind of interesting. It wasn't particularly powerful, but it was fun in what it was doing. And then I already mentioned, like, we're going to hear a lot of crunchy drums, and that's like I was really enjoying just like the bass quote unquote kick and the static snare.
This is a port of the PlayStation and arcade and Sega Saturn game to the Wonderswan. Obviously, because it's a handheld port of a much more graphically and engine intensive game, this one is scaled back quite a bit to be able to fit onto the Wonderswan. I believe it still has about 8 characters that you can choose from, but it's basically like Street Fighter combined with the Super Puzzle Fighter game, where when you attack your character, gems pop out, and then you gotta like collect the gems, and the gems make you more powerful, that sort of thing. There's characters from Street Fighter, there's characters from Darkstalkers, there's a Red Earth character named Tessa, and then I believe there might be some secret characters as well. So yes, pretty neat. I mean, I watched a little bit of gameplay footage of this, and it looks pretty cool, but I mean, to me, it's one of those things where it's like, well, I could just go play Pocket Fighter. You know, maybe back then I would have been more intrigued to play it, but like looking at it now, I'm like, I'll just play it on my like the Street Fighter Alpha anthology on the PS2. So I would just play it on that.
Yeah. Real quick, the Woody Woodpecker track that you were thinking of, it was episode 59, VGM in Motion.
Ah, okay. I knew it was like something fairly recent, not that far back as far as kart racers, but it is a kart racer, so there you go.
Starting off with the arranger, Norihiko Togashi started out doing music translation on March and Maze in 1990, and a bunch of their credits here are sound creator, sound effect, but as far as music composition goes, Final Blaster in 1990, Super Wagonland in 1991, they're credited as music brother. Kamen Rider in 1993, Kran Shinchan Arashi Oyobu Enji in 1993, and their last music composition credit is Disney's Bonkers in 94. Their last sound credit is for sound effect in Disaster Report in 2002.
Seems like they bounced back and forth between a lot of different companies, Capcom, Namco, like Namco Bandai, even Sunsoft. So kind of interesting.
Yeah. And then the original composition part, we have Isao Abe, and they started out doing sound design in Street Fighter II: The World Warrior in 1991. Went on to do music sound in Knights of the Round in 1991, and we're just going to jump up more recently here. They were the guitarist in Beautiful Joe 2 in 2004, and their most recent composition is for Devil May Cry 4 Refrain in 2011.
Okay, so still staying with Capcom. Yeah, a lot of those Capcom composers ended up leaving and going to like Platinum Games too, so it's kind of interesting how that worked. Yuki Iwai, we've definitely talked about before. Their first composition for Capcom was Gargoyles Quest 2 in 92, and then they did, let's jump around here, Final Fight 2, they worked on the music for that in 93, Tech Romancer in 1998, and one final track for them, looks like their last game that they worked on according to our records is R-Type Tactics 2 Operation Bitter Chocolate in 2009. And Setsuo Yamamoto is a legendary composer for Capcom, starting off with music design for Street Fighter II The Champion Edition in 1993, most likely handling arrangement for that. They're credited for music design there. They were one of the composers on Mega Man X in 1993, Mega Man 2 The Power Fighters in 96, Rival Schools in 1998, and we'll do something a little bit more recent. One of their last composition credits is for Project Justice in 2000, and then shortly after that, they did some arrangements on Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix in 2007, and everything after that for their credits is sound management or sound coordinator, which was their final credit for Resident Evil 3 last year in 2020, the remake.
All right.
Yeah. So we'll talk about Wonderswan, and we got a bunch of stats and information about the sound chip and everything, but I figure we'll get into Justin's first pick for this episode.
Sounds good. So this is a series that has had different releases in different places. It is Chou Aniki Otoko no Tamafuda, which was a Wonderswan exclusive in 2000. The track is simply BGM number 15, and the composers on this, I believe, are Koji Hayama and Shigeki Hayashi. We'll talk about that when we come back. Welcome back from that first track. That was from Chou Aniki Otoko no Tamafuda, the 2000 Wonderswan exclusive, composed by Koji Hayama and Shigeki Hayashi, and that was BGM number 15.
So Chou Aniki is that's that naked dude game, right?
Yeah, naked dude. It's it's a fighting game with large bare-chested men, I guess.
Muscly dudes.
Yeah, like I've heard of it before. Although, I mean, Chou Aniki, I'm pretty sure is a semi-common phrase in Japanese. So maybe I've just heard the term. But yeah, no. When I was taking a look to get more information for it, Chou Aniki is Japanese for Super Big Brother, and there are a lot of Chou Aniki games. I mean, the PSP had a whole bunch.
Maybe it's like one of those like adult film sort of things, you know, like Super Big Bro, like Super Big Bro, I'm stuck in the washing machine again, like one of those things.
I don't think so, but I mean,
No.
you look at some of these, you look at some of the cover art here, and you could be forgiven for thinking that, because I mean, a lot of the cover art is just large, muscly men in nothing but a Speedo.
Yeah, I mean, that's the Chou Aniki way, if you will. I mean, that's just how this franchise has always come across, is just big, muscly dudes doing big, muscly things. Some of the games that I've seen are very, what's the word?
Risque?
There's a lot of things expanding that look like digital giblets, digital male giblets, if you will.
There's a lot of homoerotic overtones, wacky humor,
Yes.
and very like vivid, surreal imagery. Yeah. That's.
I don't want to offend anybody with saying something like that. So, like, I didn't know if that term homoerotic was still offensive. So I was like,
never offensive. Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'm gonna let Justin say it. I'm gonna allude to it and just like let's just pin all this on Justin. So you could send your angry letters to Justin at xvgmradio.geocities.gov.
I grow in power the more angry emails I get. But yeah, I was never aware of the word homoerotic as being offensive. Like it's how things are described when it's male on male things and female on female things. Yes.
I just didn't want to roll the dice, Justin. You never know these days.
I gotcha. Playing it safe.
That's right.
I mean, some of these games have like really weird characters. Like Chou Aniki Bakuretsu Ranto Hen has a character named Uminin, who is an odd latex creature that resembles a prophylactic.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, so,
Gotta keep your fighting games safe.
Yeah.
Like, wrap that rascal, I guess.
Yeah, so this game, though, is actually the first handheld version of a Chou Aniki game. So Wonderswan got the very first.
Of course, it had to be Wonderswan.
I think I completely misspoke earlier. I think I said that these were fighting games. That's totally wrong, so I apologize. The Chou Aniki games are actually 2D shooters. The characters, they're flying through whatever scene, be it space or planetary, and they're shooting things. But this game is not. This is a card fighting RPG.
See, that fits more in line with Wonderswan,
Yes.
because Wonderswan and Neo Geo Pocket, they had so many of those like card battling RPG type games.
Yeah. So this is one of them, and boy, is it weird. But I mean, getting away from the weirdness of the gameplay, how about that music? Because
Very repetitive.
I mean, yes, but outside of the repetitiveness, I have a feeling that you probably weren't a big fan of this, but there was a lot in this one that I really enjoyed. I mean, right off the bat, you've got that super buzzy bass. That's I think what really drew me into the track and really got me like jiving with it. The track itself kind of reminds me of, and we talked about this once a while back, but going all the way back to episode 2, the Toa Plan episode, that we had a track from a game called Teki Paki. And
yes.
The sounds in this remind me a lot of how that track was put together. There's that buzzy bass. There's these synths that are switching from left to right every time they do their thing, and then there's just this sound, and I don't know how to describe it. It's just like I just wrote down crunch ? Like it's just like this weird noise, and I'm a sucker for weird noises like that, especially when they go with the song.
Yeah. I don't know how to feel about this one. I like the chippy nature to this. It sounds very chip-oriented.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it has that chiptune vibe to it. But the loop, to me, is very short, and I feel like this would be a really good character select track. In fact, I'm almost certain it is. If it's not, then I'd be shocked. But it's just like got that really nice bounce to it, with dun 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 dun. It's almost like circus music mixed with like salsa. It's weird. Okay. Because when you throw in that bass, that buzzy bass with the duh, 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 it kind of goes back and forth between these really high-end melodies and then these low-end crunch to the bass. It's a unique track. It's pretty neat, but I just don't know how to feel about it, mostly because it just doesn't change enough for me. You know what I mean? But
that's fair.
I think if I knew what this was from, I think I'd have more ability to cope with it, so to speak. Like, understand, like, oh, okay, this is a character select theme. Got it. Perfect. Absolutely makes sense. Great track. But if you were like, this is the main theme of the game that you'll hear while you're playing for 5 hours straight, I'd be like, why? So,
I mean,
that's
we
kind
take
of
a look
my
at the rest of the
feature.
game, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think this might be the character select track, but who knows? Not me. I've never seen it. I've never played it.
No.
But
no.
these composers. So I mentioned earlier that Koji Hayama and Shigeki Hayashi are likely the composers, and I say that because there weren't a lot of places to find information, and this is going to be a recurring theme. We probably won't talk a lot about it, but finding the music and finding composers for a lot of these tracks was very difficult.
Yeah.
So I found on a website called rpgfan.com, they listed these folks as composers and arrangers. So
Okay.
To touch on Koji Hayama, they started doing music in a game called Soul Bianca in 1990, and they have a handful of things, some of them more up-to-date, but we also have Moto Rotor MC in 1992 that did music, Cyber Speedway in 1995, Front Mission 3 in 1999, I'm familiar with that one, Mega Man ZX Advent in 2000 they did music. And
Oh, wow. Okay, so still pretty recent.
Yeah, and as recent as Super Smash Bros. For Wii U in 2014, they did some music arrangement on that. Yeah. And then Shigeki Hayashi started out doing sound on Evolution Worlds in 2002, did some music composition in Hudson Selection Volume 2 Star Soldier in 2003, and then we've got Nights in the Nightmare 2008, and battle sound effects in Tears to Tiara 2, Heir of the Overlord in 2014, and finally music in Utawareru Mono Zan in 2018.
All right, let's move into our next track. This is a port of Mega Man and Bass, also known as Rockman and Forte on the Super Famicom. This is Rockman and Forte Mirai Kara no Chosensha that came out in the Wonderswan in 1999. This track is called Opening Stage, and it's by Toshihiko Horiyama, Naoshi Mizuta, and Akari Kaida. Thanks for joining us back on our Wonderswan episode. This track that we just played was from Rockman and Forte Mirai Kara no Chosensha, and that came out on the Wonderswan in 1999. That was Opening Stage, and it's by Toshihiko Horiyama, Naoshi Mizuta, and Akari Kaida. I had a lot of trouble trying to find out information about this one in terms of if it's a port or if it's a sequel. Yeah, some of the language used on the internet about this one makes it seem like it is a sequel, but I don't think so. Like, if you look on Wikipedia, it seems to have a plot that is different from other sources. Like, on Moby Games, for example, they state that it's about a robot named King that's taken over Dr. Wily's base. But on the Wikipedia page for this game, it makes it sound like it is a sequel involving somebody named Rockman Shadow, not to be confused with Quint from the Game Boy Mega Man games. I guess Dr. Wily sees this like evil version of Mega Man, Rockman Shadow, and ends up sending Bass to, I don't know, fight him as well. So you could choose between, I believe, Mega Man and Bass, just like in the Rockman and Forte or Mega Man and Bass game. Depending on which version you play, Super Famicom or Game Boy Advance, really doesn't matter as far as that goes. But yeah, this one, it was hard to peg down as far as the plot or like where this fits in the Mega Man canon, but basically all you need to know is that it fits in the same vein of the Rockman and Forte game.
That's pretty cool, actually. So it seems like this is kind of another Wonderswan exclusive, assuming that it's not just a port, but it doesn't look like it's a port.
Kind of. I mean, this track, which I love, by the way, this track is a song that was also on the Mega Man and Bass or Rockman and Forte soundtrack, but obviously redone for the Wonderswan. That buzz and crunch to that bass, as well as the tempo of the track is faster, in my opinion, than the Super Famicom version, which has a more jazz vibe to it. It's got like da da da. It's got more of like a slowed down samba jazz dance kind of vibe to it that keeps the tempo of the track very fast on this version. This one definitely speeds it up and adds a bit more crunch to that bass, and the melodies themselves sound a lot sweeter than they did on the Super Famicom. I really dug this version of this song, but I'm curious about what your thoughts are on it.
So this one was interesting. I kind of enjoyed it, but I'll say the only reason that I didn't enjoy it was because my brain was doing a thing throughout the song. So what happened in my head is it felt like this was a Mega Man track or like an arrangement of that track from Rockman and Forte, but it was arranged by a modem, or it was a modem dialing into AOL.
Okay. I can respect that. There
were a lot of modem-like sounds, and every time they came in, my brain just went meh, meh. Yeah, as if it were dialing into AOL in the 90s. And it didn't, I wouldn't say it killed it for me, but it definitely, like, every time those sounds came up, like I started laughing, and it made it hard to focus on the rest of it. Again, this one feels very, very chippy, like just like the last track. I mean, not for the same reasons at all, but especially when you compare it to like the Super Famicom or the Game Boy Advance version, I think that came out. Yes.
Which was just a port of the Super Famicom version with like a shrunken down level, you know.
Yeah.
But everything else, I believe, was the same. But in this one, you face off against Dengan Man, Komaso Man, Aircon Man, and Conro Man, and then eventually you can challenge Clockmen, Compassmen, and R Shadow or Rockman Shadow himself.
So did you say Aircon Man? So
Aircon Man, yes.
So there's just like an AC in a window that you have to fight?
I guess.
Very clearly air conditioning.
Air conditioning, man.
That's
I don't
funny.
know. Yeah, very weird bosses in this one. And again, this is what leads me to believe that this is a sequel, because even though it's using like the music from the first Rockman and Forte game, there's a lot of things in this one that aren't in that game. Like, for example, you have Rush, you've got Eddie, you've got Tango and Beat in this one, which Tango, you really didn't see that often. Tango was mostly in the Game Boy games.
Yes.
If I recall, Mega Man 5 for Game Boy, but they did have Tango in a cameo on Mega Man 10. But other than that, the only 2 games that Tango appears in is Mega Man 5 and this game that we're talking about today. And then finally, and this is going to really throw you back, remember when we talked about Wily and Wright, No Rock Board, That's Paradise?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we
Board
talked
card
about
games
it on
too.
the board card games too. You're correct. So there's another character that was exclusive to that game named Reggae, and that's a bird-type support robot. So very, very weird that this game is as far as that goes. It got terrible reviews, by the way. Like, a lot of people are saying it's like the worst Mega Man game ever.
Worse than the MSX Mega Man? Wow.
I guess maybe worse than the PC games back in the day, and apparently worse than
that's what I meant, yes.
Super Rockman Adventure or whatever that came out on the PS1. That's supposedly one of the worst Mega Man games ever. Let's go over these composers real quick. Toshihiko Horiyama started off with Mega Man X as the primary or one of the primary composers, then followed it up with an uncredited listing for Demon's Crest in '94. They worked on a lot of Mega Man stuff. The Mega Man Battle Network 4 games, Blue Moon and Red Sun in 2003. Then Mega Man Powered Up in 2006. They were the composer on that, pretty much like arranging stuff and then maybe creating a few new tracks for a couple new levels. But other than that, they've also worked on Resident Evil Revelations 2 and Phoenix Wright. They did a couple Phoenix Wright games. Their final game, sound design on Resident Evil 3 Remake last year. Naoshi Mizuta has a bunch of other credits as well with Capcom. Street Fighter Alpha Warrior's Dreams in '95. Resident Evil 2, back in the day, they did Sound Cooperate on. Composition-wise, it looks like they moved over to Squaresoft or Square Enix, doing stuff like Theater Rhythm Final Fantasy in 2012, Final Fantasy The Four Heroes of Light in 2009, and then just continuing to work on Final Fantasy games. Looks like they work on mostly like stuff outside of the box, like outside of the main franchise, with their latest game being Final Fantasy Dimensions 2 in 2017. Finally, Akari Kaida started off with Street Fighter Alpha Warrior's Dreams in '95. I'm going to try to pick some other stuff that wasn't talked about, like Cyberbots Full Metal Madness in '95, Onimusha 3 Demon Siege in 2004, Okami in 2006, Luminous Arc in 2007. They did a bunch of Mega Man stuff as well, mostly for the Battle Network series, but their final game that they composed for so far is Samurai Jack Battle Through Time in 2020.
Nice.
So, weird, neat little game from the Mega Man series. Looks like we're getting a call on our caller request hotline. So, Janine, go ahead and forward that over to us.
Caller, you are on the air with XVGM Radio. Who is this and what can we play for you?
Hey, this is Zada. I'd like to hear something from a Guilty Gear game. Can you do that for me?
Wait, Zato's from Guilty Gear, right? Well, Zato, that sounds like a plan. Did you have a track in mind?
No, I just want to hear something. I need to get pumped up, and we all know that Guilty Gear music is the best.
Well, it is pretty good stuff, you're right. Well, Zato, why don't we play a track called Feel a Fear, also known as Zato 1, from Guilty Gear Petite 2, which came out in the Wonderswan Color in 2001. Does that sound good for you?
Perfect.
All right. That track was composed by Takayuki Nakamura. Let's hit it.
Right, welcome back. That was Feel of Fear, Zato 1's theme from Guilty Gear Petite 2, which was a Wonderswan Color exclusive in 2001, and that was composed by Takayuki Nakamura.
That was something.
Yeah. Did you not like that one?
I don't know how I feel about that one. The beginning definitely threw me for a loop. You know, here's what I'll say. Similar to how you felt about that previous track with like some of the more like chirpy kind of like AOL modem type things, that was very prominent in this in the beginning and then like maybe more in the middle. Those parts definitely kind of turned me off on the track, but like I held out for the more crunchy, really rockin' like the really like crunchy heavy metal stuff that Guilty Gear is known for, but on a chiptune level. And I was digging that, but like I like this track because it did so much, but the things it did, I don't know if I'm that big of a fan of.
Okay.
So it's kind of a mixed bag for me. But what about you?
No, I think that's pretty fair. So, I have a lot of thoughts on this track actually. There's a lot of really cool things. I also agree there are some things that kind of turn me off from it. I'd say like right around the middle of the track where like the drum sound effects get really kind of intense. It felt way better to me like from there on, and I feel like part of it's because I'm so used to, like we did an entire episode on Guilty Gear music, and like there is a feel to Guilty Gear music. There's a sound to Guilty Gear music, and that sound isn't really based in chiptunes. So,
agreed.
The fact that this is a chiptune track kind of threw me, and it didn't feel very Guilty Gear for most of it. But when that drum part got more intense, that's where it kind of started feeling a little bit more Guilty Gear to me, anyway. I like a bit of what they were doing with the stereo effects in the beginning. There's a whole thing that was big on YouTube years and years ago where people were doing music with floppy drives.
Yes.
That's what this reminded me of. Like the sounds, the buzzing, it sounds like those floppy drives. And
absolutely.
It also kind of reminds me of there's an artist, we might have talked about this before. There's an artist on Bandcamp named Master Boot Record. Their stuff is kind of like it's hard to explain. All I know is I love it. The music itself is actually like they do albums for like $1. So like you can listen to music for free on Bandcamp, or you can buy the albums really cheap. But they've done like covers of I think there's an album called Whereas, and it's all like covers of like video game music or other like kind of famous tunes, and then the rest of it's just all original, and it has kind of a similar sound to it, like the floppy drive sound, but it's all done with, I think it's a Sound Blaster. I can't remember what card it is, but it's all digital, like computer synthetic sound, and it's really, really fun. Go check that out at some point.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So this is actually a sequel to an earlier Wonderswan Color Guilty Gear game.
Yep. Guilty Gear Petite 2 is a sequel to Guilty Gear Petite. Not really a whole lot to talk about as far as the game goes. I mean, it's a Guilty Gear game. It's a fighting game. There's actually not a whole lot of information around the story, so I just assume, Kaikisuke, Soul Bad Guy, et al. Are fighting because that's what they do.
Right.
But this game, interesting feature, there was an online service for the PS2, or that you could use the PS2 way back, and you could connect to that with this game to unlock, I don't know if it's characters, but there's a game link feature for Guilty Gear X Plus on the PS2. That's pretty neat. Yeah, so this game could game link to that game using that online service, which was kind of neat.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All the characters in this, though, look like chibi versions or SD versions of the main characters. Kind of like Pocket Fighter, actually.
Exactly, yes. Very much so. And it's got, I think, only one original character, and the rest are all normal. So the traditional Guilty Gear characters in here are Soul Bad Guy, Kaikisuke, May, Faust, Potemkin, Chip Zanuff, Zato 1, Milia Rage, Axel Low, Johnny, Testament and Venom are hidden characters. Jam is in here, Mito Anji, and then the original character who was actually in the first Petite game is Fanny, and she's like a nurse. She's got like a giant syringe, and she, I believe, is only in Guilty Gear Petite 1 and 2.
Ah, okay. All right. That sounds familiar because I feel like there is a syringe-based character in another Guilty Gear game.
Me too, actually.
Yeah.
It's definitely not her. It might be the person that she has a connection to Dr. Baldhead, which is Faust. I mean, Faust has a syringe, technically.
Oh, yeah, true.
You know, I feel like
well.
I feel like you're right. I feel like there's another female character with a syringe somewhere in the Guilty Gear series.
I also feel like I'm maybe confusing it with Morrigan when she dresses up as a nurse, too. She has that giant syringe as well.
Yep. You might be.
So
That's possible.
That's a possibility. Very neat. And then the composer is just the mainline composer, isn't it? For Guilty Gear?
No, because the mainline composer is what's his name? Daisuke Ishiwatari.
Oh, that's right. Okay. All right. Then who's this guy?
So this guy is the series composer for both of the Petite games. He did Petite 1 and 2.
Okay.
His name is Takayuki Nakamura, and he started out doing game music in ESWAT City Under Siege in 1990, and has a lot of really cool credits to his name. Did music on Tobal 2 in 1997. Did music in Custom Robo Arena in 2006. Sound effects and music designer in WWE Raw in 2 in 2003. And then just coming up, like, he's still working. His most recent music composition credit looks to be Family Party, 30 Great Games, Obstacle and Arena in 2012, but he has done sound direction on Shenmue 3 in 2019.
All right, next up on my picks is from a game called Gunpei EX. There's a very specific reason why it has that name, but we'll get into that after the break. This is from the Wonderswan Color in 2000, and this track was called Stage Music, and it's by an unknown composer. All right, welcome back. That was from Gunpei EX. That came out on the Wonderswan Color as a launch title in 2000, and that was stage music by an unknown composer. So the reason why you may be saying Gunpei, wait a minute, why does that sound familiar? We're going to get into that in just a second, but I want to know what you thought about this track, Justin.
This was another weird one, Mike. You are you were picking some of the weird tracks this evening.
What?
Yeah, if that's what you're into. No. So,
hey, you picked Chou Aniki, so.
I mean, okay, fine, fair. The tempo on this one was really like fast and frantic, which I liked. I dug it overall. The bass line was really repetitive. It's weird to hear me complain about something being repetitive because, like, I like techno and I like a lot of stuff that tends to be repetitive, but the prominence of the bass line and the quick repetitiveness of it made it a little bit odd, but I think it kind of went with a lot of the other stuff that was in there. I particularly liked, I don't know how to describe this, so like I called it like the tinkle sound effect that goes from like left to right. Maybe twinkle is a better descriptor. But,
Than tinkle?
Yeah.
I think so. We're not talking about something else.
Yeah, no. But I did like that, and I liked a lot of the sounds that they were using. The one thing that really threw me is, I'll call it the free jazz section that happened, where it's just like everything kind of went out the window, and I was just like,
Yeah.
what's going on here? But it only lasted for a few seconds before
seconds.
it came back, and I was like, okay, I can deal with that.
I want to call that section the virus section.
Okay.
Because it feels like the track got a virus.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like trying to fight it, and then it like goes back into like the
Yeah.
I don't know. This reminded me of something that you'd hear in like maybe like a Mega Man game. Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. I was really vibing on this one. First off, I love the whole techno trance, really hard hitting bass drum with the do 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 do. It almost sounded like Strong Bad, like do 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 do. I was waiting for it. But I really like that call and answer kind of melody that they had going on, where it's like, and then the other ear like,
Yeah.
It very much triggered memories of playing really frantic puzzle games when you get to a part of the puzzle game where like stuff's going down and like, you really gotta hurry up. And I don't know that much about this game, and nor have I played it. I know that there were versions of it that did release on like later systems like the DS and the PSP, but Gunpei overall started off as a tribute to the Wonderswan creator Gunpei Yokoi. His name may be more familiar to you if you are a big Nintendo fan. He helped create Metroid, Kid Icarus, the Game Boy, Game & Watch. He helped invent the cross-shaped D-pad, the control pad. So kind of a major innovator for Nintendo. But he also, unfortunately, created the Virtual Boy. So he left Nintendo shortly after that. He started working on the Bandai Wonderswan, but unfortunately he got into a car accident and died unexpectedly. So it's unfortunate.
Yeah. So the Wonderswan was released after his death in 1999, originally as the Bandai Wonderswan, and then later it was updated to the Wonderswan Color in 2000, and then a final revision of the Wonderswan Color was called the SwanCrystal, and that was released with an improved LCD screen and a lower price point. The entire line was eventually decommissioned in 2003.
Yeah, the original release for the Wonderswan had 9 different console colors for the first handheld's release. So it came in pearl white, skeleton green, which sounds really cool, silver metallic, skeleton red, blue metallic, skeleton blue, skeleton black, camouflage, and gold. There were 3 special edition version colors as well, which were two-tone, which were called Frozen Mint, Sherbet Melon, and Soda Blue. They have like the best color names.
Yeah, those are awesome. I want one now.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. The Wonderswan Color launched with its own set of colors: Pearl Blue, Pearl Pink, Crystal Black, Crystal Blue, and Crystal Orange. So,
yes.
Man, these are awesome.
I know, right? And then the SwanCrystal's colors were Blue Violet, Wine Red, Crystal Blue, and Crystal Black.
That's a lot to collect. If anybody is interested in collecting the Wonderswan and all of its colors, like the Game Boy colors and whatnot, that's a lot. And
I'm sure there's somebody out there.
Probably. And I'm sure these are not cheap, so.
No.
I think this is a good time to roll into our next track here.
Absolutely.
So, we will hear from a game called Wild Card. This is a Square game that came out in 2001 for the Wonderswan Color. The track is BGM03, and I had a hard time finding a composer, but I think it was composed by Kenji Ito. Right. Welcome back to our Wonderswan extravaganza. That was Wildcard from the Wonderswan Color in 2001. BGM 03 was the track, and I am mostly sure that it was composed by Kenji Ito.
Nice.
But I want to know, I have some fun thoughts on this one, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
It felt like an RPG battle theme. That's the vibe that I got from this one. You know, it kind of starts off frantic with the kind of stuff going back and forth, but then it kind of slows down the pace at points where it's like, it almost like it stops in its tracks where it's like da na 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 da, and then it kicks back in with like more crazy music. But again, really hard to pin down the sound of this because previous tracks that we listened to, a lot of them had very crunchy bass and, you know, very buzzy bass. This, I felt like the bass just kind of went along with the melodies, plus very little in the way of drums as well. So
yeah, that's one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting about this track is I can't pick out any drums whatsoever.
Yeah.
I don't think there was any percussion sounds really in this. It was all ensemble.
Yeah, seems like it was made or designed to be like an orchestral track done without any kind of percussion, mostly like woodwinds and horns, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So the two main thoughts that I have around this track is that opening. Every time I've listened to this track, all I can hear is Bowser's Castle from Super Mario Bros. 1. Like it's definitely more involved and a little bit more complicated,
Sure.
but like and
Yeah,
that's all I can hear, and it's kind of neat to hear it in like a different light almost. And then it's just an opener. Like the loop is the rest of what we hear there, and that's the part that like I like the opening, but I find the rest of it really interesting because to me it feels like, you're absolutely right, like an RPG battle music, but it feels like they took like Final Fantasy battle music and mashed it up with Castlevania music.
Okay.
Like it almost has like a baroque-ish feel to it.
Yeah, I can get
And,
that.
I was wondering if you would think that or disagree.
I don't disagree. I do catch that now that you mention it. Definitely feels like something that may have been on like a Game Boy track, like maybe like a Castlevania Legends. I could picture this on something like that. Yeah, I could picture something like this in a game like that.
I mentioned that I think this is a Kenji Ito track, and I say that because we couldn't find any credits for the game. The only reason that I think it's Kenji Ito is when I was looking around for the music from this game, I found a Reddit post that credited it to him. So it may not be Kenji Ito, but our options are Kenji Ito or unknown composer. So I'd rather tell you a little bit about Kenji Ito here.
Okay.
So Kenji Ito started out doing music composition on Final Fantasy Legend 2 in 1990, also known to some as the Saga games, and went on to do a ton for Square. Saga Frontier in 1997, Tobal Number 1 in 1996. They did music arrangement in Concept Saga in 2008. All the way up to even last year, they were doing music composition in Hero Must Die again. So they're very prolific and pretty well known to the Square world.
Neat. So let's get back into talking about the Wonderswan. Right before the Wonderswan Color was released, the Game Boy Advance was announced with much more impressive hardware, which was ultimately the downfall of the Wonderswan.
Yeah, the price point on the Wonderswan, interestingly enough, was always intentionally low, but unfortunately Bandai could only capture like 8% of the Japanese handheld market, and like you said, once the Game Boy Advance launched, the handheld just faded into obscurity.
Yeah, there was a North American release that was planned with Mattel, which I didn't realize until I started doing research for this episode, but unfortunately they decided to back down, most likely because of the Nintendo handheld juggernaut. Though it's always been considered that Squaresoft's return to Nintendo handhelds with the Game Boy Advance was also a huge factor, since Squaresoft were releasing unique ports of the first 4 Final Fantasy games, and they were an early adopter and supporter of the Wonderswan.
Yeah, that was actually one of the things that got me into trying to figure out how to get a Wonderswan or what it was when I was in high school, because we never got 2 or 3 over here. Our 2 and 3 was actually 4 and 6, and then I'd seen that like 1, 2, 3, and 4 were on the Wonderswan, and they looked almost SNES level graphics.
Yeah.
So I was like, obviously before the GBA release, so I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, how can I get one? And never realized that it was just not possible for 16-year-old Justin.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of games from the WonderSwan ended up ported over to the Game Boy Advance anyways, so, makes sense. You had something interesting about the batteries, though, right?
Yeah, it was from the research that I was doing. I found that all 3 versions of the WonderSwan ran on a single AA battery. The original WonderSwan could get 40 hours out of a single AA, and then, with the color and the crystal, those got cut down a bit, but they still had really good battery life on a single AA battery, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I mean, this game system was very budget friendly, so it definitely tried to save you some coins, so that way you weren't spending as much with batteries, but, it was also sold at a very cheap price, so, it's compared to Nintendo handhelds and whatnot.
Yeah.
So the handheld sold a total of 3.5 million units, with 1.5 million of that being for the WonderSwan and 1.1 million of that being for the WonderSwan Color, and the remaining amount most likely makes up the SwanCrystal. So I'd probably say the SwanCrystal is the most rare of all of them.
Yeah.
So we're going to move into Namco Super Wars, which came out in the WonderSwan Color in 2002. This is BGM 04, and it's by an unknown composer.
Are you tired of being injured just because of who you are? Aren't we all? Well, except me. Why? Because I'm Steve McQuack, owner and head lawyer at Positive Duck Injury Lawyers. Every day, Wonderswans get injured doing the most meaningless tasks. Screwing in light bulbs on a tall ladder, broken wing. Roller skating on the freeway, severed bill. Firing at the gun range, decimated webbed foot. And hey, we get it. Are you a swan of a handheld gaming system? The world may never know, but you shouldn't have to suffer. So call us today for a free quote so you aren't swimming in medical bills. We're here for you because remember, we care.
Call 203-999-9999 today for your free estimate, and remember to tell them Steve McQuack sent you. Please note, live agents will call you back to document your case. Please have injuries taken care of prior to calling. We are not a hospital. Utah residents, get your phone's permission before calling. This might be the stupidest idea for a commercial yet. Void in Utah.
All right, we are back on our Wonderswan extravaganza episode. This was Namco Super Wars, which came out on the Wonderswan Color in 2002. This is more of a later release. This track was called BGM 04, and it's by an unknown composer. This, honestly, sounds the most rich and vibrant of all the tracks that we've played in terms of the tone. I mean, gone are the more like mobile phone chip tone, kind of AOL modem sounds, and instead what we have is probably, I'd say the closest that any track has come to this sound is probably the Rockman and Forte track. So I was really impressed sound-wise with this one, but I felt like it had a good like beat to it, you know, like there wasn't really any drums, but I could like create a beat in my head that would go along with that bass line, the doom 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 doom, kind of gets like really stuck in your head pretty quickly. And as the track goes on, it has a lot more flourishes that kind of take place, like da-da-da-da-da, like that type of stuff. And I really was enjoying that. It brought out a lot of like RPG kind of elements to the soundtrack with this song in particular, but I was really, really digging this song.
Yeah, I actually really have to agree. I didn't have a whole lot to say about this song other than like compared to a lot of the other stuff that we've listened to, this track feels a lot softer to me. But this is also, I think, the first track of this episode that I just enjoyed from start to finish. Like, this was nice to listen to from go to the very end. There's nothing in here that I can pick out as like, oh, I didn't like this, or that threw me off, or like this was silly.
Right.
It was just a really nice track.
Yeah, well composed, well arranged for the sound, just overall really strong. And I don't know if it was because it was a late release and maybe they had more time to learn how to compose on this handheld, but if that's the case, maybe developers should have waited a little bit with some of these songs. And I don't mean to like poo-poo on this at all. I am enjoying this episode overall, despite like some of the more like weird, creepy, cranky kind of sounds. But like overall, it's just a fun mixed bag of music to listen to and to explore. So it's been a moment, if you will.
Completely agreed.
So Namco Super Wars is a tactical RPG, and it's developed by Namco, published by Bandai, so you can kind of see the beginning of Namco and Bandai's relationship, because now, of course, Bandai owns Namco, or Namco owns Bandai, or whatever. Right. I think it's Bandai owns Namco, so. But this is a crossover game. It has a bunch of different Namco characters, and a lot of people say that it's the predecessor to Namco X Capcom, which in itself was a predecessor to the Project X Zone games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. For the series that this is featuring, you can play as Valkyrie from the Valkyrie series, like Valkyrie no Boken, Dragon Buster and Dragon Velour, Dragon Spirit, Tower of Duraga, Genpai Tomaden, Mappy, Dig Dug, Philios, Wonder Momo, Bravo Man, and Family Stadium all have featured characters, and not just like one per game, it's like a lot. 3 or 4 at the very least. Dragon Velour and Dragon Buster alone have over 10 characters, so a lot of characters to choose from in these games. Pretty neat. So this one is pretty interesting. It works like this. You're playing on a square grid, playing against a computer who is also placing their characters on their side, and then you place your characters on your side, and each one moves, and then they make like an action or turn with whatever they do. So if they move and they start fighting, then you would fight, you would do whatever the attacks are or whatever, and then, afterwards you can consume these things called spirit points, which will regenerate each turn. The game is divided into different stages, and between each stage you could visit a shop and prepare. Very similar to Project X Zone. So if you've ever played a Project X Zone game, pretty much the same setup. You play a level, you beat the enemies, and then at that point you're sent to a store in the story mode, like they kind of interject some character from some random franchise who is a shopkeeper or shop owner, and they're like, hey, what do you want? And then you buy whatever it is that you need for the items that you might use, and then the next level starts. So, I don't know. Well, that's it for me, so let's go into your next track.
Yeah, so this was one of the major releases for the Wonderswan Color. It was called Blue Wing Blitz, and it came out in 2001. The track we're going to hear is BGM 08, and it was composed by Kumi Tanioka. Hey ho, welcome back. That was Blue Wing Blitz from the Wonderswan Color in 2001. The track was BGM 08 by Kumi Tanioka.
I'm trying to remember what this track reminds me of, and I just can't put my finger on it. It's like on the tip of my tongue, but like it's definitely RPG. It's very sad and somber sounding. But
is it Bahamut's Lagoon?
I don't think so. Have we played a track off
okay.
that? No, it's something that we played.
I don't think we have.
Okay. I feel like it's a track that we played from like either an RPG or some sort of game, and it sounded very similar to this. It's got that very like sad, somber kind of almost Master System-y kind of vibe here. But the tones...
Everything that's got minor tones now is the Master System t-shirt.
Right. But the tones here were a lot sharper and crisper sounding. So musically, like the production on it didn't sound as rounded as a Master System does. So, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this one?
So this one's a bit more simplistic than I think some of the other stuff that we've played. I get a combination of a couple things. I threw Bahamut's Lagoon out there because a good chunk of this track reminds me as well of something, and maybe it's not Bahamut's Lagoon, maybe it's whatever you're thinking of, and neither of us can remember what the heck it actually is. But I get... whatever that, I'm going to call it Bahamut's Lagoon because I don't have any other reference in my head. Okay. A little bit of Legend of Zelda, the dungeon theme, and then the whistle from Super Mario 3.
That's from the first Zelda, yeah.
And Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah.
This game, so I think I said at the end of the last break that this was one of the major releases for the Wonderswan. It didn't do all that well, although I'm not sure if the game didn't do well because it just didn't sell well, or if it didn't do well because the Wonderswan didn't have enough market share for them to sell a ton of games. But this is another Square game.
Okay.
And it was designed by the Front Mission team. So if you're familiar with the Front Mission games, it's kind of similar. It's a tactic RPG kind of game, but it focuses on aircraft battles. So it uses like actual airplanes. It's not like mechs and stuff,
Right.
but it's different like biplanes and different types of airplanes. And you're on a tactic map with squares and whatnot, and you can fly around and shoot and do all these other things. And it sounds actually pretty interesting. Like, I've not heard of like a turn-based tactical role-playing game that focuses on aerial warfare. The closest thing I can think of is probably the like Advanced War games.
I was just
on
going to
the
say
GBA.
that.
Yep, because you got tanks, you got
Yeah.
like, there's all sorts of units
Battalion
there,
Wars.
not just,
Battalion
Yeah,
Wars or
yeah.
Advanced Wars, yeah.
So, and I've only ever played, I think, the first event. I don't even remember. I think it was on the DS. So
Okay.
who knows? I've only ever played one of the games. It was quite a bit of fun. I think about 2/3 of the way through the game before like the difficulty ramped up to a point that I just wasn't getting anywhere. So I'm not usually big on tactical games. Final Fantasy Tactics, not my favorite Final Fantasy. There is something to them that it always like makes me interested. And then like I've played Final Fantasy Tactics. I got semi far in it before I was just like, I'm not enjoying this. So there's something to be said for that, but it seems pretty cool.
You know what's interesting about this is that this handheld has mostly produced, as far as we know, based on this roster of, the small sample of games. Almost every single game is either a fighting game or a puzzle game or a tactical RPG game in some way, shape, or form. It almost feels to me like they were trying to avoid action platform type games, because there's really not that many. I guess Mega Man, like Rockman Forte, is probably the closest that we could get to something like that. But yeah, it's pretty strange. The assortment of games, very heavy on the tactic RPG games.
That's fair. Yeah, the Wonderswan had a number of just like oddball games. Like there was a number of card-based RPG games
Right.
as well. Wildcard, I think, is the only one that we have in our list of picks. But I know that I came across a number of card-based fighting games or card-based RPGs or whatever on the system, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But to touch on the composer here, Kumi Tanioka started out doing sound on The Fallen Angels in 1998 and then went on to do music composition in Chocobo's Dungeon 2 in 1998 as well. They have a number of Final Fantasy credits here, Crystal Chronicles, and then all of the Crystal Chronicle, basically all of the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicle games were composed by Kumi Tanioka.
Okay.
And then you have Mario Sports Mix in 2010, Theatrhythm Final Fantasy, and Curtain Call in 2012 and 2014. And their most recent credit was Darius Burst Chronicle Saviors in 2015. They're credited as piano.
Nice.
And on that note, Janine is telling me that we have a Patreon call. Janine, you want to send that on over to us?
XVGM Radio, who is this and what can we play for you?
Hey, this is Ryan McPherson, and I'd like to request Battle Scene A from the 2001 remaster of Final Fantasy II for the Wonderswan Color.
All right, Ryan, we can definitely play that for you. So, as Ryan said, this is Final Fantasy II on the Wonderswan Color, which came out in 2001. This track is called Battle Scene A, and it's by Nobuo Uematsu. Welcome back. That was Ryan McPherson's Patreon pick. He chose Final Fantasy II, which came out in the Wonderswan Color in 2001. This track is Battle Scene A by Nobuo Uematsu.
Oh, man.
This is great.
That was I mean, to be expected from Nobuo Uematsu track. I'm sure it was arranged by somebody. I know that we could not find the arranger, if that is the case, but like, oh man, so good. This is it feels a little unfair compared to everything else that was in here.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's just harkens back to the early Square music for Squaresoft. But I gotta say, I don't have much familiarity with Final Fantasy II. I've never played it, but this track really reminded me of something I'd hear in like a later Castlevania game, like maybe something from Order of Ecclesia or Portrait of Ruin. It had a nice up-tempo beat, but there was no drums in this track. Again, missing out on the drums there, but to supplement it, a very kind of chuggy, heavy bass line was present, really kind of led the path, like doop, almost like a gallop, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure.
But some of those melodies, especially like later towards the track where it's like a lot of like call and answer type stuff was present, very Baroque era. So that really, I mean, hey, anything Baroque is going to get my interest. So I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm trying to remember. I've played a bit of Final Fantasy II, specifically on the Final Fantasy Origins collection for the PS1. I did not beat the game. In fact, I'm not even sure how far I got. I think, if I remember correctly, when I got Origins, I wanted to play all the way through 1 and then play through 2. I didn't finish 1. I've beaten 1 multiple times on the NES, but for some reason, whenever I get to the end of 1, when you go back in time on the PlayStation 1 version, I just don't have enough resources and HP to get all the way through. Like, you basically have to do a boss rush along with all these random battles before you get to the final boss, and there's multiple forms of the final boss. And on the NES, I don't know how I did it, because it's the same kind of setup. Like, you don't have, the only potion you have is a small, like a regular potion, which I think is like 50 HP. It's such a pain to actually get through all this stuff. I never went back and finished it, and I started Final Fantasy II, but I don't know how far I actually got. But it's a really interesting system, because the first game, you pick the 4 character classes, and then you go through like that. And in this one, like, you level up your skill with every weapon. So anytime you change a weapon, you're starting from base 0 at that weapon. You have to use it a bunch to level it up. And I think there are character levels too. So like, there's some math that happens there, but it's very intricate in how it works. But even at that, like, I don't remember the music well enough to say like, oh, like I know how this compares to the remaster version in Final Fantasy Origins, because it's been so long since I've touched it, I couldn't tell you. But this is still, like, as far as the track goes, was really complex, even without the drums, and a lot of fun. So
yeah, I can get on board with that. It's a very fun track, and I really enjoyed it. So good stuff overall.
Yeah.
Anything specific about this version of the game that you can tell me?
I do know that this is one of the first games that I ever played, particularly an RPG, that actually sets you up for failure right in the beginning. And by that, I mean, like, the game opens with this really crazy situation and crazy fight, and then it throws you into a battle, and you just get stomped. Like, you are not supposed to win the battle. But, I mean, if playing the first Final Fantasy, like, I remember how that went. And when I tried this, and just got, like, destroyed in the beginning, I was like, what am I supposed to even do? And then as I'm complaining to nobody, the game continues, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm supposed to lose. Well, that didn't feel very good.
Right,
I also think... No, that's the third one. Never mind. I was going to say, I think this is where the Onion Knight comes from, but I'm actually pretty sure that Onion Knight is Final Fantasy 3, so scratch that.
So, Nobuo Uematsu, we've talked about tons on this show. I don't even really think that we need to get into too much about them. I don't know, pick 3 random games that they've done. Final Fantasy VII. Rad Racer. And Last Story.
There you go.
On the Wii. There you go. Perfect.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. All right, let's move into your last pick.
Yes, so I'm going to go out with a really weird one. This is SD Gundam Emotional Jam. This came out in the Wonderswan on 1999. The track is BGM 06, and I was unable to find a composer. All right. Welcome back. That was my last track of the episode. We have one more coming at you in just a little bit. But this was SD Gundam Emotional Jam, the 1999 Wonderswan game that was composed by someone that we could not find, and the track was BGM 06.
This definitely has a very frantic Gundam vibe.
Yeah. Very fast-paced, and it's kind of a short loop, but it also has that feel of like, this feels like it's either battle music or decision music. Like, this feels like there's something going on, and I couldn't tell you which it was, but I can see both, like, if you're playing as like Amuro Ray and you have to make a decision as to whether or not you're going to attack this Gundam, or you're gonna side with the colonists, or you're gonna do something like something important is going on, or it could be that you're fighting against Char and it's the end of the game. This feels like an important track almost, like there's something big happening.
I could also picture this as a narration piece where like you're going through a sea of dialogue, and it's very frantic, like your ship just got struck or something like that, and you're like, going back and forth, like, Mayday, Mayday, something happened, and then the other person's like, what does the scouter say about its power level? And then the other guy's like, it's over 9,000, that sort of thing. And then you end up listening to Konniwa Hurricane from Bubblegum Crisis. I don't know. It's probably how it goes.
Good reference. I like that series.
That's right. Anyways, so this is clearly based on the Gundam series, but SD Gundam, I'm assuming it's chibi style.
Right. So this is based on, like, technically the main Gundam series, like Mobile Suit Gundam, but it's chibified. So you are, if you've ever seen any of the, like, there was an SD Gundam show that came out, I think, in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I hated it because, like, the Gundams were sentient. Like, it wasn't about the people. It was about these robot mechs that were alive.
Right.
And this kind of combines the two. Instead of it being about robot mechs that are alive, it's about the characters and their struggles and everything, but all of the fights take place in the Gundams that are chibified. So
Okay.
It's a little on the weird side. There's also, so aside from not being able to find a composer on this game, it was also really hard to find information on this game. Most websites, even like Moby Games, well, Moby Games didn't have anything. This game does not exist according to Moby Games.
Oh, fun.
But the other websites that I could find basically just said SD Gundam Emotional Jam is a strategy game developed by Tom Create and published by Bandai, and it was released in 1999, and that's just where they all end. But I was able to find a review for this game on GameFAQs, and this review was posted by somebody named Kenshi in 1999, so back when this game came out. That's how long this review's been up there, and it was updated in 2003.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Emotional Jam follows the system of Super Robot Wars involving the Gundam universe with a slightly improved system. Kenshi also says this is a must-have for all Gundam fans and owners of a Wonderswan.
Oh.
He rates the gameplay at a perfect 10, saying the gameplay is simply incredible. Each robot has different stats, and there are a wide range of different Gundams, including the F-90 Gundam, which was one of the movies, and it looks like the Wing Gundam is in here as well. Graphics and sound, gave it a perfect 10. The graphics are simply incredible. The graphics are on par with the highest quality of the Game Boy games, and each sprite is clear and well animated.
I'm sensing a little bias here.
A little bit. And,
Yeah.
and replay value, do you want to guess what he gave the replay value?
Perfect 10.
Perfect 10. A wide assortment of Gundams, a lot of replay value.
Wow.
So here's the funny thing. All three of those categories, he gave perfect 10. Overall rating, 9.
What? He
I
gave
don't
every
get it.
part of the game a 10, and then he gives it a 9? Wow.
It's like, I just don't want to. I mean, there's no explanation, but I just assume it's like, well, I don't want to give the game a perfect rating, even though I gave every part of the game a perfect rating. That's just so silly.
That's ridiculous.
But yeah, so that's SD Gundam Emotional Jam.
Okay, then. All right, and since we don't have any composer info, we're going to move into our final track of the Wonderswan episode, and that is from a game that is commonly mispronounced. It's called Weitsblade. Not Whitesblade or Valtzblade, it's Weitsblade. And this is a Wonderswan release from 1999. This track is called BGM 27, and The only information that I could find was that for the composer was that it was by Nuka Shinji, and there's no info on them on the web other than just his name. So,
Wow.
there you go. Welcome back to XVGM Radio's Wonderswan episode, where we're covering Wonderswan and Wonderswan Color games. That track that we just heard was from Weitsblade, which was a Wonderswan original game that came out in 1999. That track was BGM 27, and it's by Nuka Shinji. I'm hesitant to say it's actually by Shinji Nuka, because Shinji is generally a first name, not a last name for Japanese people, but sometimes those names can get swapped around depending on the sites. So I'm wondering if it's Shinji Nuka instead of Nuka Shinji. But
That's a good point. Yeah.
I couldn't find any information on them as well as this game. There was literally only one review that I could find on this game online on YouTube. So if you're looking for more information about these games, there's a YouTuber. They have a show called Swan Song, and it's just Wonderswan reviews basically on YouTube. So go check it out.
Yeah, and they're really quick. They're all under 5 minutes, and it's funny. I wish I had realized beforehand they covered SD Gundam Emotional Jam and a number of other games that we mentioned here, like Gunpei and a few others. So worth checking out if you are interested in hearing more about these games and some other tracks, because he puts tracks from the games in the background too.
Right, yeah, short, simple reviews too. So, Weitsblade is a Pokemon style game. Before we get into the game, what do you think about this track?
It was really cool. It felt so. I feel like at this point we've had a number of tracks that feel kind of classical or baroque, and I don't know. I'm struggling to call this one baroque because it's a term that we use a lot to describe things that aren't always accurately baroque. But it has some of those elements there, particularly a lot of the classical elements, and it definitely felt different than the other stuff that we've played, but at the same time, I feel like it kind of meshes with a handful of other tracks that we've heard tonight. This is another one that I have no complaints about it. I enjoyed it from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. The tone on this one is a little bit more harsh, but it does feature drums, which is nice. It had very sharp, snappy drums, chiptune-y drums. I don't know, the melodies, as you said, are most likely orchestral themed, very frantic. It's a very frantic track. I overall really enjoyed it, but I gotta wonder when it takes place in the game. I'm thinking it's during a battle. I got the vibe like in Pokemon, because this is a kind of a Pokemon style game. So I got the vibe when that border goes around in Pokemon where it's like,
Yeah.
And I picture this song playing right after that, so.
I think that's a pretty accurate way to look at it.
Yeah. So this one is initially, when you're starting to play it, it feels more like a traditional JRPG where you're running around a map in a town, going from place to place, searching for stuff. Your character moves really fast. So I noticed that when you were moving around, I was like, whoa, Jesus, wow, move really fast in this game. But it's like a monster hunting type game. The creatures in it are called Vites, which is why it's called Weitsblade, I guess. So there are up to 200 of them, and you can combine them to get more powerful monsters. So it's not really evolving, it's more combining, kind of like Kirby 64 when you combine the powers to get a singular better power. So That's at least the vibe that I got. But not much else that I could find on this game, honestly. Go check out that review that we talked about. I think that'll probably be your best case scenario for finding out information. And again, Shinji Nuka or Nuka Shinji couldn't find any information on, so not much to talk about with this one.
Yeah, no, that's fairly simple, straight to the point.
I feel like most of the tracks we really stacked pretty high with a lot of information, and then we got to like the tail end of the episode and we were just like, yep, another Wonderswan track. Yep, it's chippy, it's orchestral. All right, see you later. Like that sort of thing. So
yeah, well, I mean, we also picked for the last two tracks, we each picked a game that just didn't have a whole lot of information out there. So
very true. Fair. Very true. All right, now's the time of the episode where we pick our favorite tracks. Justin, what's your favorite one of these?
So this is harder than I thought it was going to be. I really thought going into this that there was going to be like a pretty clear-cut winner. I think I'm going to go with Ryan McPherson's track, the Final Fantasy II Battle Scene A. And part of me is screaming that it's a cop-out because it's a Nobuo Uematsu track and it's not fair. But
cop-out.
But to you and that part of me, I say, shove it. No. But very, very close second is your Namco Super Wars track was really cool. Like I said, it was like the first track that I enjoyed from start to finish. And then after that, I would probably say Feel of Fear, the Guilty Gear Petite 2 track. It had a lot of sounds that really just got me going and got me revved up.
Yeah, I actually am going to go with that Namco Super Wars track. I feel like it was the strongest of the tracks that we've picked. But aside from that, I gotta say I really dug that Ryan McPherson Final Fantasy II track, as well as the Rockman and Forte track too. So good stuff all around. You know, a lot of these tracks are just really very minimalist in terms of the instrumentation and everything. So they really tried to do a lot with so little. So
yeah,
that's about it.
Nice.
Yeah. What did you guys think? Let us know in our social media links down below in the README section there. So we'd like to take a moment to thank our Patreon patrons, without whom this show's continued improvement would be impossible. They are Alex Messenger, Cam Worma, Chris Hart, Dan Lawton, Jordan and Anson Davis, Kung Fu Carlito of the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, Chris Myers, Mike Carney, Rage Cage, Peter Panda, The Autistic Gamer 89, Brad Austin, Chris Murray, Jeremy Rutz, Llama Adam, Marcus Stewart, Nathan Cooper, Nick Davis, and Ryan McPherson.
If you would like to become a patron, you can sign up at patreon.com/XVGM Radio. There you can see the different tiers as well. Just $1 gets you a thank you at the end of the show and access to our monthly live shows.
You can visit our website, xvgmradio.com, where you can listen to all the episodes and learn more about your hosts, as well as any of our guests or composers that we've had on the show.
If you'd like to reach out to us, you can always email us at xvgmradio@gmail.com.
If you've liked what you've heard, please consider giving us a review on iTunes.
You can join our Facebook group and chat with other VGM lovers at facebook.com/groups/xvgmradio, where we talk about everything from current game news to sharing awesome VGM tracks or just talking about the podcast itself.
You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle on both of those sites is @XVGMRadio.
If you don't have any other social media or just want to try something unique, check us out on our Discord group chat. Links will be in the show notes.
In 2 weeks, we return with another brand new episode. Justin, what are we tackling in 2 weeks?
So in 2 weeks, we are going to do something. So this Wonderswan episode was more or less like Japanese exclusives because the stuff never came over to America. Mm-hmm. So we're going to do something vaguely similar. We're still talking about stuff that's not American. We're going to talk about PAL games. I think we're going to call it Only in PAL.
Yes, PAL exclusive releases. They never came out anywhere but PAL territories. So this will be very interesting. There's a lot of really weird, wacky stuff that came out only in PAL.
Yeah. I think we also have a number of those like European computer system consoles that we're going to be touching on. Possibly some composers that we've wanted to showcase previously and haven't really showcased them as much as I think we'd like. So we're gonna have some cool stuff there.
Agreed. All right, so in 2 weeks, we will see you on XVGM Radio. This is Mike.
And Justin.
Signing off for XVGM Radio.
Yeah, I actually really have to agree. I don't know why it sounds like that pains me to do so. It really doesn't. We agree on plenty of things, but
Yes.
yeah, I didn't have a whole lot to say about this song other than like